In this position in 1923, Grandmaster Aaron Nimzovich creates the Immortal Zugzwang game. A Zugzwang in chess is a position where your opponent runs out of useful moves, and any move they make worsens their position. A Zugzwang usually happens in the endgame, when there's only one or two pieces on the board. But in this game, Nimzovich makes his opponent run out of moves when he has nearly all of the pieces on the board. Let's see what happens here. So in the game, Nimzovich has a big space advantage, and White is having a hard time creating space. But they think they solve all their problems by playing pawn to e4, striking in the center, and taking advantage of Nimzovich not being able to take the pawn, because then we lose the knight on h5. But that is exactly what Nimzovich goes for. He just plays f takes e4 and sacrifices his knight. Because after he takes the knight, now we infiltrate with rook takes f2, grabbing a second pawn and infiltrating with the rook. So the opponent defends their bishop with queen to g5. But now we take over the f-file with rook a to f8. And now in this position, it's already hard for White to find any good moves. So they play king to h1, sidestepping with the king so now they can move their light-squared bishop. But we just keep infiltrating. Rook to f5, attacking the queen, and once the queen drops back, bishop to d6, further encroaching on the position, and now creating the threat of rook to e2, which just traps the queen. So the opponent defends that with rook to e1. But after rook to e1, we reach the Immortal Zugzwang position. Nimzovich forces his opponent to resign the game by playing the move pawn to h6. Pawn to h6 makes his opponent resign the game because White can now move 0 pieces. Let's look at it. First of all, this knight can't move. Every single move loses a knight. If you move the bishop like bishop to c1, then the knight is no longer defended and we just pick up the knight. You can't move this rook because if you move it, rook to e2 traps the queen. The bishop can't move because this square is defended, and the rook can't move because the square is also defended. So all that's left are pawn moves. But if you play a random move like pawn to a3, then we just go pawn to a5 and the position is identical. So the only logical move is pushing the g-pawn with pawn to g4. But the reason we played pawn to h6 was to restrict the g5 square from the queen. And now the winning move here is rook to f3, sacrificing the rook and trapping the queen. The queen now has no useful squares, and you can't take the rook because now you have rook to e2. Checkmate.